Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Miles finished his shift early due to a mistake in the schedule. It was rare, almost never happened, but that day the supervisor mixed up the days off and let him go by accident. He took it as a sign. It had been a while since he felt Amanda was different, kind of distant, short answers, quick hugs. He thought about using the unexpected free time to do something simple. Stop by a bakery, buy the sweet she liked the most and have dinner at home, just the two of them. Nothing grand, just an attempt to get closer again. A gesture that might break the ice. But when he got home, everything seemed normal, even going up the stairs. In the hallway, he heard a muffled laugh coming from the bedroom. He stood there for a few seconds, confused. Amanda rarely laughed like that. He slowly turned the doorknob and the scene hit him like an explosion. Amanda, without clothes, hugging a man he only knew from photos and TV commercials, Blake Harmon. A famous chef. The same one his wife said admired for his talent, a genius in gastronomy, as she would repeat. There he was, on the bed where they slept together for more than a decade. Amanda froze. Blake pulled the sheet to cover his body, trying to understand who the man standing in the door was. Miles didn't scream. First, he pulled his phone out of his pocket and started recording, with trembling hands, eyes fixed on the two. Amanda tried to cover her face and asked him to stop. Blake stood up, nervous, and started dressing quickly. That's when Miles dropped the phone on the dresser and went after him. Not to hit, but to impose. His face was inches away from Blake's when he said, with a firm and angry voice, "Get out of my house. Now." Blake backed away, stuttering something that Miles didn't hear or ignored. Amanda screamed for both of them to stop. Blake picked up his clothes from the floor and, tripping, left the room. Miles followed, opened the front door, and watched the chef cross the street, putting on his shirt inside out, trying to hide his face. As soon as he disappeared, Miles went back in and faced Amanda. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, wrapped in the sheet, pale-faced. "How long has this been going on?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. She took time to answer. Tried to give excuses, broken sentences like, "It was a mistake, it means nothing, you distanced yourself." Nothing made sense. Nothing justified it. Miles just grabbed his phone, left the house, and went to the front of the barracks. He parked and stayed there for a few minutes until he could breathe deeply. His head was spinning. His heart felt clogged. He thought about Zoe, his daughter. Thought about all the times he trusted, protected, believed he was building something solid. And now, standing there with eyes fixed on the steering wheel, he realized that life had crumbled in minutes. He didn't go home that night. Slept at the barracks after stopping by a pharmacy to buy something to relax. His phone kept vibrating with messages from Amanda. He didn't open any. Needed time. But unlike running away or pretending nothing happened, he knew what to do. The next day, before breakfast, he looked for a lawyer. This wasn't just an affair. It was betrayal with an address, name, face. It was a slap to dignity. And he would respond accordingly, with strategy, with proof, and especially, with determination. The next morning, Miles talked to the captain and got permission to stay in one of the rest quarters at the barracks for an indefinite period. It was small, simple, but enough for what he needed: space, silence, and distance from everything that hurt him. It was just the beginning. Miles knew he still had to face more pain, more exposure. But if there was one thing he learned from all the fires he faced in life, it was that not every fire is put out with water. Some only stop when you remove the fuel. And Amanda, that day, lost forever the right to be part of the home he had built with so much effort. The first call from Amanda came that same night. After that, came messages, video calls, audio files that Miles deleted without listening. On the third day, she showed up at the barracks. She looked paler, eyes sunken, no makeup. She didn't say a word. Just left an envelope with a letter and left without looking at anyone. Miles waited until the end of his shift to open it. Read everything in silence, shoulders tense and teeth clenched. She asked for forgiveness, said it was a mistake, that the involvement with Blake began after the marriage cooled down. That she felt invisible, neglected. Said she didn't blame him, but she was lost. The letter ended with a request for him to think about Zoe before taking any rash action. That was the only part that really moved him. Thinking about Zoe was unavoidable. They were always close. She was 17 years old, a creative spirit, studying arts and talking to her dad about everything. It was with him that she confided when she got bad grades, when she fought with her friends, when she dreamed of traveling abroad. Amanda was stricter, demanding. Miles was the balance, the shoulder. And now he had to find a way to explain to his daughter that the house where she grew up was no longer the same. Amanda's infidelity wasn't just marital, it was family. It was a crack in everything Zoe believed was safe. That same week, Zoe came home from school and found the cabinets overturned. Miles' clothes were gone. His scent in the house had weakened. Amanda tried to explain carefully, but the teenager understood the essentials. Her parents were separating. She went upstairs and called her dad, but he didn't answer. The next morning, Zoe went to the barracks. Miles met her outside. She ran to hug him. Cried a lot, but didn't ask questions. Just said, "Tell me what's happening." He took her to a nearby cafe and told her everything, no embellishments, no yelling, no cruel details. Just the truth. Said he saw Amanda with another man and that he didn't intend to go back home. Zoe was shocked. Her silence said more than any sentence. After a few minutes, she whispered, "You're not going to fight for her?" Miles answered that fighting was already done internally. That now it was time to protect what was left, and that included her. Zoe took out her phone, took a deep breath, and showed a picture. It was Tyler, her boyfriend. He smiled next to her father. The same man Miles had thrown out of his own house a few days before. Blake Harmon. The shock extended. Zoe was also involved, although unknowingly. His daughter was dating the son of the man who had destroyed their parents' marriage. His head spun. Zoe explained that she had been with Tyler for several months, but hadn't told her parents yet. She had only said she was getting to know someone, that he was older, but kind. She panicked when she realized her dad now associated the boyfriend with the cause of his pain. Miles held his daughter's hand firmly and asked for calm. Told her that, however difficult it was, he wouldn't mix things. That his parents' mistakes were theirs, and that she didn't need to pay that price. But the damage was done. In the following days, Zoe withdrew. Stopped sending messages. Conversations decreased. Amanda took advantage of the opening to get closer to her daughter and tried to change the narrative, hinting that Miles was being radical, that he didn't want to listen to explanations, that he always put work above family. Zoe, confused and divided, began to fall silent. Miles noticed. Felt the distance growing. Every time he tried to talk to her, the response came dry. I'm busy, talk later, or just some emoji. It was like watching his daughter slip through his fingers. In the week when the divorce papers were ready, Miles sought out Zoe. Asked to talk without intermediaries. They sat on a park bench where they used to go when she was a child. He explained everything again, now with more calm. Said he didn't want to put Zoe against her mother, but that Amanda had made a choice. And that choices bring consequences. He was dealing with his own, and hoped that Zoe could find her own path without carrying weights that weren't hers. Zoe listened, but stayed silent. At the end, she asked if he hated Tyler. Miles replied that he didn't know yet. That he needed time to separate the man from the boy, the adult coward from the son who maybe didn't even know anything. He was sincere. Zoe just nodded and left. From then on, contact became cold. Miles, used to putting out fires in the hardest places, discovered now the worst of all, the one that starts within your own home, among the eyes of those you love. The divorce process proceeded as planned. Miles' lawyer handled everything with precision. The documents were delivered, hearings were scheduled, and Amanda responded formally. The first time the two were face to face in a hearing room, she tried to approach with a look of regret, but Miles didn't even react. He kept focus on what mattered, ensuring that everything was resolved clearly, without emotional concessions. He had been betrayed directly, and even though time might soften the pain, the indignation remained intact. Amanda, on the other hand, seemed increasingly cornered. The extramarital affair with Blake wasn't a secret anymore. It had already spread. People in her office were whispering behind the scenes. Blake himself had become the target of jokes and criticism on social media. Their public image was deteriorating. During one of the hearings, Amanda's lawyer tried to suggest that all of it was just an emotional mistake, that the marriage was already worn out, and that the involvement with Blake had occurred only after months of crisis. Miles didn't speak up. Let the images he recorded speak for themselves. The judge observed the records, read the reports and message exchanges attached to the case. The evidence was consistent. The infidelity was clear. That was no longer just a story of family resentments. It was a legal battle with concrete consequences. Blake, in turn, began facing his own problems. His restaurants had been growing in recent years, attracting investors, advertising contracts, and invitations to high-end events. But with the scandal involving Amanda, he became the target of media curiosity. It only took one article appearing in a local column for investigative reporters to start digging into his life. Miles followed from afar Blake's public decline, but something still gnawed at him from inside. It was as if that betrayal had more layers than Amanda let on. The man who entered his house, lay in his bed, and ran away when caught wasn't just an opportunistic seducer. There was something else. Miles wouldn't rest until he truly understood who he was dealing with. So he decided to hire someone. Looked for a private investigator, a former federal agent specialized in financial frauds. Told everything clearly: names, faces, history, the companies Blake managed. Asked him to be discreet and focused on the business side, especially the fiscal records of the restaurants. The professional took a few days, but came back with information that immediately raised an alarm. There were obvious discrepancies between the declared and real values. The bank movements of Blake's homes were much higher than what appeared in the government filings. The investigator presented documents, extracts, suspicious movements, and data cross-references with ghost suppliers. Miles read each page carefully, swallowing his anger gradually. That was much bigger than an infidelity case. It was a man building an empire on the basis of fraud. The firefighter took a deep breath, gathered the complete file, and contacted a friend from high school who now worked in tax inspection. Handed everything over. Didn't mention names, didn't ask for favors. Just said there was something worth investigating. And left in silence, without expecting recognition. The justice he sought wasn't public. It was personal. And it was underway. Not long after, articles started popping up about an ongoing investigation against a renowned chef. At first, the names were kept hidden, but the connection to the restaurants was obvious to those who followed it. Blake started missing public commitments. His PR team canceled interviews. One investor broke the contract. When the news finally gained a face and surname, he had already lost 2 major sponsors and was officially mentioned by the tax department. The accusation was clear: tax evasion. Thousands of dollars hidden over the past few years. The case became criminal. Amanda panicked. Blake distanced himself from her almost immediately, trying to protect his image. The two weren't seen together after that. Zoe, who had been distant from her dad since the conversation in the park, found out about Blake's arrest from the news. She tried to talk to Tyler, but received only a short message, "I need time to understand all of this." That was the last time he responded. The separation became definitive. Tyler disappeared from social media, cancelled the messaging app account they used to talk, and vanished. The emotional fracture in Zoe was brutal. Besides seeing her mom involved with a married man, now the guy she loved had cut contact without even explaining properly. Miles received the news of the arrest with a mix of surprise and relief. Didn't celebrate. Just breathed deeply. The man who destroyed his family now faced the weight of his own mistakes. What started with adultery ended with handcuffs and headlines. It was a cycle closing in an unexpected way. Throughout this entire period, Amanda tried, in a discreet way, to get back close to Zoe. Sent messages asking if she wanted to have dinner, offered rides, bought gifts. But nothing seemed to work. The daughter suspected every gesture. Saw everything as an attempt to clean up her image. Zoe was too hurt to pretend normality. Miles, on the other hand, maintained a certain distance. Respected his daughter's space, but stayed present. Paid for her art course, checked her report cards, attended student exhibitions. Spoke little, but demonstrated through actions. Knew that any emotional pressure could push her even further away. So he preferred to wait. Slowly, the relationship began to mend. Still with silence, but with less distance. One day, Zoe came to him with red eyes and said only, "Thanks for not throwing him in my face." Miles understood. She referred to Tyler. To the fact that he hadn't made the boy an enemy, even when he had reasons to. That moved him. It was the first time, since the whole explosion, that he felt his daughter still saw him as the same dad. The trust hadn't been destroyed, just hurt. And wounds, with care, heal. Even the deepest ones. The following months were a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Blake had been arrested, Amanda withdrew completely, and Zoe, although slowly starting to reconnect with her dad, still seemed to hold grudges he couldn't reach. Miles continued living temporarily at the barracks. The room was small, uncomfortable, but it was safe, practical, and far from the memories of a house that now belonged to a painful past. On his days off, he took walks without direction, ate in places he hadn't visited before, and, when he had the courage, opened the photo album on his phone, trying to figure out where everything started to fall apart. It was on one of these days that he met Denise for the first time. He was sitting in a cafe, almost finishing his coffee, when he heard a polite request to share the table, since the place was full. It was a woman in her early 40s, with a folded lab coat on her arm and 2 books in her bag. They talked little during that first meeting, just polite exchanges. She thanked him, he smiled and left. 2 weeks later, they crossed paths again, this time at a local animal adoption fair organized by a NGO. Denise was there as a volunteer. Miles recognized her face, and she did too. They talked a bit more, and he discovered she was a vet, divorced almost 3 years ago, mother of 2 teenagers. Like him, she was learning how to deal with the ruins of what once was a family for good. The connection happened effortlessly. There were no plans, no marked dinners, no anxious messages. Just casual meetings that became frequent. She listened without judging. He asked without pressuring. Each conversation was like a brick placed carefully in something that perhaps, one day, could become a new home. Denise didn't pretend that everything was easy, and that brought them even closer. She spoke about the challenges with her kids, the insecurity of starting over, the fear of trusting again. Miles understood every word, every pause. They were on the same page, living different pains, but similar roots. Zoe met Denise on a Saturday afternoon, without warning, during a quick visit to her dad. The reception was polite, no big smiles, but also no coldness. Miles didn't force any closeness. Denise didn't try to impress either. They were natural. The following week, Zoe sent a message to her dad saying, she's calm. Better than I expected. It was little, but for Miles it meant a lot. It was the sign that maybe, with time, his daughter could accept that her dad was trying to rebuild something, not to replace what was lost, but to find a new meaning. Their meetings with Denise intensified. Together, they started attending community events, helping in social actions around the city, and even organizing a toy collection campaign for underprivileged children. In these activities, Miles found a peace he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't about big achievements. It was about doing good with someone grounded and wholehearted. Denise's kids also started getting to know him. At first, they were reserved, which was understandable. Over time, Miles helped them with schoolwork, took them to the movies, watched a soccer game of the older one. All without rush, without impositions. It was a light, genuine coexistence, as it should be. On a regular night, already at home, because gradually he started leaving the barracks to spend more time with Denise, they sat together at the table with the kids and Zoe. It was Zoe's 18th birthday, and she had asked for everyone to be together. Miles held back his emotions throughout. Seeing his daughter blow out the candles next to the kids of the woman he was learning to love, and laughing naturally, was more symbolic than anything else. There he understood that, even though the family he built with Amanda had crumbled, it was still possible to have a home. A new one, with new bonds, new stories. One night, late, while closing the door after another family dinner, Miles looked into the living room. Zoe was lying on the couch, laughing with the step-siblings. Denise was collecting the dishes in the kitchen. That wasn't what he had planned years ago. But, with all the flaws and scars, it was the most true thing he had now. The betrayal had been a breaking point, yes. But it was also the beginning of a transformation. And in the end, he realized that the freedom he had been searching for wasn't about revenge, exposing, or punishing. It was about forgiving in silence, moving forward with courage, and allowing life to bloom again, in a way he would never have predicted. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.